All right, so we are loaded up to go look at this 1965 Ford Galaxie. A couple tips I have for you guys is the first one is to dress warm. For us, it's pretty cold here and it's been cold. So everything is like absorbed the temperature. So it's not just like a one and done kind of thing. So make sure you have all of the equipment that you need to be warm. That way you're not making rash decisions because you're cold and just went out of the cold. So dress warm. And when we get closer, I'll show you guys, when we get to the Galaxie, I'll show you some things to look for. But we got tools and jacks and everything loaded up in the back. We do have to drive an hour and a half back. The guy tells us that it runs and drives, but he could just be wanting to get rid of it. So we have no clue whatsoever what we're going into. We see some rust in the pictures in the rear quarters, but he says the frame is mostly solid, and again, we have no reason to trust this guy. So we have no clue what we're rolling into. And again, we have an hour and a half drive back. So we're going to test drive it, make sure it has all of the transmission gears and all that great stuff. I think one of the more important things will be the tires more than anything, because, transmission and all that stuff, you can limp at home. But if you have a blowout, you're screwed. So hopefully these tires are in good conditions. But yeah, dress warm and make sure you eat beforehand. So that way when you break down, you're not hangry as well. So dress warm and make sure that you're not going to end up hangry and even more just pissed off at the world. So I'll keep you guys posted in a little bit. All right, guys, we are here with the 65 Galaxie. We just took it on a quick little test drive. Let me give you guys a tour. There is an exhaust leak and the manual brakes on this thing. If you guys have ever tried to or had a nightmare where you're driving a car and you can't come to a stop, that's what this feels like. Is like you're putting your foot to the floor and you're not stopping anywhere. Transmission seems to be fine, but let me give you guys a quick tour of it real quick and show you kind of the stuff that we're looking at here. All right, so it does have, unless they swapped it, it does have the 352. It's got a 2-barrel carb on there. It's got stock manifolds, but it does have an aftermarket exhaust of some sort. The tires don't look to be dry rotted, so I do think they'll be okay for the drive home. Interior is good. I mean, it's got a tear in the back there, but it's not bad. Floorboards so far seem to be solid. In the pictures, this kind of different two-tone made me worried that this was a Landau top and that it was super rusty underneath, but I've knocked on it and it's not a Landau top. I mean, I knew that just as soon as we showed up and realized it's not vinyl. We do have rust back here. A little bit of, surface rust going on along there, and over here is probably the worst body rust is right there. But you do have surface rust going on in your door jambs. This has been rusted out right there. Where's that? Right here. But we took, we're slamming around everywhere, crawled underneath, and they look to have a little bit of surface flaky rust coming off on the door, on the floorboards, but nothing bad. But yeah, so like I said, it's pretty much all stock. He did put a Chevy HEI distributor in there. There's a fuel cell in the trunk, and he says that it has new brake lines, but again, it definitely has manual brakes in there for sure. The first things we're looking for is absolutely how much rust is on the car. We're getting a great deal on this. However, we want to make sure that isn't blinding us. And we're going to get something that we can't drive because exhaust fumes leak in from the amount of rust everywhere. This guy, he said he took it on a huge cruise yesterday. One issue is that the starter on these blocks is right next to the exhaust. So you have to, even with factory exhaust, it's right there. So he does say that the starter does like to get hot. And if you turn it off after you ran it for a while, you got to let that starter cool down before it'll restart. And it's cold enough out here that wouldn't take long at all. But yeah, so we're letting it run right now, looking for oil leaks, coolant leaks, anything that's going to tell us that we're going to have immediate rebuild that we're going to have to do, or that it's not going to make the hour and a half drive home. That's more important, because if it'll make the hour and a half drive home, it'll do what we need it to do across the board. But so let me do some more looking at this and show you guys some stuff. Sign here is that these tags expired in November of 24. So at some point in the last year, it has been inspected and it's been on the road. And again, he said he took it on a cruise yesterday. Again, it does have a little bit of an aftermarket exhaust with some mufflers on there. But this is like that 2-barrel carb is killing this thing. It needs more air, more fuel. But again, that sign, the fact that it's recently been tagged is really good. So this thing does have an dual exhaust. Let me give you guys a quick test. Go ahead. So definitely bogged down, but that's what it sounds like. Actually, I lied earlier when I said the driver's side was the worst rust. This looks to be the worst right there. But so let's go on a test drive and take you guys along. All right, so I got my dad driving here. We're gonna let him drive it. I'm gonna do the hour and a half drive home, but we have our windows up right now, and that's gonna help us know if this, like, make sure we're not smelling fuel or exhaust fumes, and that's gonna help let us know if these floorboards are rotted out, because those exhaust fumes will leak up through here, especially since we know there's an exhaust leak at the firewall. We can hear it. So we know that there's an exhaust leak there, and we should smell it if these floorboards have any holes. But we're also trying to make sure that all the transmission gears work. And so we know nothing about Ford. We are both Chevy guys. My dad used to, he owned some Fords and stuff, but it's been years for him, and I know nothing about them. I could barely tell you the difference between a Windsor or a Cleveland. But yeah, the badges on this say 352. It does look like a small block, right? Yeah, it looks like a small block. He said big block, so I think we're going to be able to use that in our negotiation power, is that it's a small block. And the 352 doesn't make the kind of power we were looking for. So yeah, we're going to easily be able to do that. Are we getting on the highway? Okay. All right, we're going to take it on the highway because we do have to get on the highway either which way to get home. Yeah, brakes are awful. So let me turn you guys around and give you guys show you what we're working with here. How's it driving?
Good. I just figure out what gear I'm in.
The massive steering wheel is hilarious.
Okay, can you?
You're clear. We don't have any mirrors. The mirrors are in the trunk. We have this. We have the rear view mirror, but we don't have any side mirrors.
We got Jesus.
We got Jesus on our side. But we do have heat, and it is working very well in here. It is already really warm.
So it's a cruise-o-matic, is what it says. So I think we have to start in that green drive and then go up to the third gear.
Be careful not to slam it. I guess you can slam it into neutral. Because try to hit 70, because that's what speed. Oh. Was that a kickdown?
Yeah.
So kickdown works. That's pretty rare on old cars.
I'm just trying to figure out
Most of these guys who've done, carb work or anything, most of the time the kickdown cables don't work because they've been adjusted wrong. Maybe get that camera fixed. They've been adjusted wrong, or they just never got reconnected. So it's really cool that the kickdown works. At least in the Chevy world, it's pretty rare for them. We are way below everyone else. Like, we are so low to the ground. Let me show you guys what we got going on. Hang on. He's playing with the steering wheel, and we are still going dead straight.
He's got a lot of play.
Absolutely gutless, but I mean, again, these old, this is called an FE, right? The FE box. I don't think there were high flowing engines at all. I don't even see how. Yeah, I don't see how this thing had 400 torque.
Not in this condition.
Yeah, no, this is
4 barrels eating it up though.
Yeah,
Two barrels
that 2 barrels pretty rough. But I mean, it's handling highway right now. It seems to be shifting mostly fine. The heat works really well.
Can't tell what gear I'm in. That's the hard part here.
But I mean, if it's hitting 70, it's obviously in its top gear though.
Must be, yeah.
So it's shifting fine. I don't smell any exhaust. Yeah. Do you smell any exhaust or anything? No. Okay. Yeah, I don't. So I'm not smelling anything. All the crank windows work. Heat is turned off, but it's still coming through, and that's just these old heaters. I guess that doesn't change between Chevy or Ford.
She's cruising right now at 65.
Yeah.
It just seems to be.
Yeah, she's happy.
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't get there fast, but we got there.
Aside from floating.
I mean, temp gauge isn't going over too high. It has moved. It was at 150 when we first got here. And that's another sign is I look for whenever we first got here, when you pop the hood, I touched the manifolds, and he recently had it running. They were warm.
They were warm?
They were warm. They weren't hot, but they were warm. So he did have it running.
He pulled it from his storage where we
saw
the video.
Yeah, so...
where the next turnaround is.
I'm not sure. So I'm going to get some directions pulled back up so we know where we're going. And I'll update you guys, let you guys know if we got this or what the deal is. All right, so we put it in reverse, and we moved about like 5 feet, and then it died. So we are currently waiting on the starter to cool down, but we have the trunk pop. So let me show you guys what's going on in the trunk. So they've put a fuel cell in there. It is actually a lot more solid than the pictures made it look. I mean, You do got some holes through from the quarters, and there's a fire extinguisher. This fuel cell is actually pretty solid. It's actually bolted in. Those aren't self-tappers, which is kind of impressive. This is actually, I mean, it's got AN fittings on there, which is very impressive. And the trunk is massive in that kind of old school way. So we're gonna crawl underneath actually and look at the body and make sure there's no big holes, since we're stuck waiting for it to cool down anyway. So this is why you don't get too excited, because we just got done inspecting the front. We crawled underneath while we're waiting on the starter to cool down, and the front floorboards look totally cool. We were totally fine. And we came back here and we were looking more on the trunk, knocking it, and I crawled underneath, and the fuel tank, the factory one, is still there, and it was in the way, so we couldn't see anything from the factory, you know, or from the tank well, and everything looked fine. And then I glanced over it, and let me show you what I found. This is the trunk that was just laying there. But you come under here, give me a second, and right there's a hole, and then over here in this frame well is an even worse hole. Hopefully you guys can see that. It's kind of hard to show, but yeah, right there's a big old hole, and it is shot over here. And so we almost put the cart before the horse, but luckily we caught this, and now we will be walking away from it. If you're looking, I mean, frame rust is completely up to the person. If you're someone who is a great welder and you're looking for a project like this, then there's nothing wrong with it. This is not the project for us. We're looking for something that we can trust. My dad can put his grandkids in there, and we can go out and every weekend without having it to be down while we tear the frame off and fix it. This is not the project we're looking for. And again, this is at a decent price point, but it's just not, it's not going to work for us. You know, we were expecting only body rust, not frame rust, and for trunks, and literally I touched one side and my whole finger went through. So this is why you be as thorough as possible, despite being excited, because logic is going to trump your excitement level every time. And, you know, you just got to follow through with that and trust your gut. And we went into this knowing it was a possibility, but just knowing how bad that is, we're going to have to walk away from it.